Hey, Wendy, welcome back.
Hey, hey, hey.
Good to see you again.
There you are, T. How you doing?
What'd you say? What am I doing or how am I doing?
How you doing?
I'm doing all right. I'm doing all right. It's a Friday. I don't know what day we'll be airing this, but it's a Friday. So, it's a
Mm,
good day. But, in the life of an entrepreneur, it's just never ending.
true, so true.
What are you doing?
I'm here in sunny Miami, yay for me, and doing the entrepreneurial thing, bookkeeping. So exciting,
Mm-hmm.
so exciting.
How would you say your entrepreneurial path began? Like, what sort of got you going?
To be entrepreneur, honestly, it's sort of a family thing. My grandfather always owned his own business. My dad kind of owned his own business. Even my mother's father was entrepreneur. So you kind of grow up in that environment where everybody does their own thing. And I think your mind is sort of focused on that or is not afraid of it. So when the opportunity came for me to get in real estate investment, it wasn't like, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm afraid to take a chance. I jumped in feet first, and here I am.
Hmm. Okay. Okay. Yeah, I wouldn't say that my path has been that, but I would say that I would call myself a serial entrepreneur. So, some of the businesses that I've been in. So, it's graphic design, photography. I don't know if you knew that I had a greeting card company for a short time.
Did
Also,
not know that about you.
yes,
You're a
that's a
talent. I
whole other
didn't.
story. Whole nother
Oh,
story. Yeah, I mean, it was in the early days of gay marriage in Massachusetts, and so a friend and I were like, "Oh, why don't we start a gay greeting card company for gay couples?" And but we had no business background, we had no real training, and so we took some courses along the way, but it was a bit overwhelming. So I mean, it sort of combined a few of my passions, graphic design and photography, and then my
mhm.
friend is also very entrepreneurial, and so we both were like, oh, let's give this a try. But neither of us really thought about some of the sales that we had to do. We didn't think about the bookkeeping. We didn't think about some of those other
Mm,
things, the financing of it, the cost of production and distribution. We didn't think about those things, and so it didn't last long because we both got kind of frustrated. But it was still a good foray into the idea of becoming a business owner and becoming an entrepreneur.
nice.
I said, passion, like, and combine some of my passions because, as our show for today is turning your passion into a business. And,
Yes.
that's what today's guest, he's a longtime friend of the show, will be talking about. But, one of the things I want to ask him is how do you know what's the difference between knowing that you're good at something and knowing that you're passionate about something that can be turned into a business?
There's many a home chef that thought they could own a restaurant and have failed miserably.
Interesting. That's an interesting
Yeah.
comparison.
Well, no, because you're passionate about cooking. My grandma makes the best whatever, and we're gonna open a restaurant. It sounds great. And then they open the restaurant, they realize what, as to your point, the bookkeeping, the cost, the financing, just the mundane tasks that make a restaurant successful, and they end up failing.
What is it, like 80% of all businesses in the US are small businesses?
Hmm.
It's some really high number. I don't know if it's
Yeah,
it's more than 50%. I don't know if it's like 60, 75, or 80%, but it's a
yeah,
very high
it
percentage.
is. Yeah.
And so I kind of wonder, like, are people starting these businesses because they're passionate about it, because they're just good at it, or something that been handed down to them? Well, let's see. Are they passionate about it? Are they good at it? Do they inherit it? Or is there some other reason? And I think it'd be interesting just to kind of see, we're focusing on the passion side of it, but I'd be interested to hear if there's some difference in how people approach business and how their
Hmm.
business do, based upon how they get into that.
Another topic for another show.
That is very true. That is very true. Perhaps for a panel, because that's a lot of different angles to come at.
True.
Yeah. But maybe we should bring on today's guest and, start
Yay.
seeing what he has to say. So let me put up the card and let me read his bio. So today's guest is Vincent Jones. He is an innovative connector with a passion for building dynamic communities around common purpose and finding creative solutions to advance progressive change. Currently, he is founding CEO of the Citizen Jones Companies, a collection of socially minded businesses created with the spirit of doing good, having fun, and helping others doing the same. It consists of Citizen Jones Travel, Proud Photobooth, Citizens Jones Consulting, and Citizens Jones. So joining us today is Vincent Jones. Hey, Vincent, welcome to the show. How's it going?
Hello, good morning. Going well.
And where are you joining us from?
I wish it was somewhere more exciting, but I'm in home in West Hollywood, California.
Oh, Hollywood. I mean, that's pretty exciting.
West Hollywood, there's a difference. And no, it is exciting, but I'd rather be in Malta right now where I was supposed to be for Euro Pride. But I had to do some other work things and couldn't go, which, as you know, as entrepreneurs, sometimes you can't always do what you want to do, but you got to do what you have to do.
Amen to that.
Exactly. So, I read off a relatively lengthy list of all the different companies that you've created and that you're the CEO of, that you're in charge of. And, before you joined us, Wendy and I were just talking about, well, I was sort of asking the question, how do you know when you're passionate about something versus when you're just really good at something?
I don't think you ever really know until you know. I like, on Shark Tank, I love watching Shark Tank because it's a great way to kind of get advice and thoughts and feedback and whatnot, even though it's not your business. But they often say that's not a business, it's a hobby. And I do think for many people, that is the case where they have a business that is a hobby. And they may be passionate about it, but it's not really their business. It's not really a business. And I think one way you know is if you're able to take care of all your expenses by the profits of your business. If you aren't able to do that, or if you aren't comfortable to take the leap of faith to do that, then it's just a passion and not a business.
Okay. And so how do you know how to turn? So talking about your experience specifically, how did you know how to turn your passion into something that made a profit? Like what got you started?
I didn't know. It was, and it's ironic because I was always very entrepreneurial within the places that I worked. But I didn't have the faith in myself to just be an entrepreneur. I had many ideas. I was a leader of many things in high school and in college. So I was an entrepreneur of different types for most of my life. But when it came to being an entrepreneur myself and like deriving my income and my livelihood from my own efforts, I was afraid. But in my last job, at one point, I was approached by two other organizations to join them. And a mentor of mine gave me great advice. She said, don't leave your job for another job. Decide you want to leave, and then decide what you want to do, and then do that. So I did, and I applied to be the executive director of the statewide organization in California. It was like a 7-month search, and ultimately I was second choice. So I didn't get chosen. But my job, my employer, my boss, they knew that I was in the search. They helped me. They gave referrals. They helped with the whole process. And when I didn't get it, they're like, well, do you want to stay or do you want to leave still? So I still want to leave. And then they say, well, while you're figuring out what you want to do, we'll give you a contract to be able to do some work for us while you figure out what you want to do. I was like, okay. So with that contract, I was doing some work. Then I would just do my own life where I would have lunch with friends, dinners, drinks, or whatever else. And then I would say, what are you up to? I'll say, well, I'm trying to figure it all out, but I'm doing some consulting right now. It's like, oh, can you help us with this? Can you help us with that? And then I was like, oh, this is a business here. I enjoy doing this work for other people. And people were seeing that I can add value to what they were doing by helping them to do things too. So then I started to actively recruit clients. And by the 6 months after leaving my last job, I was at an inflection point where I had several big contracts that will require me to hire people. And I was also approached for another really big job. And I said, well, I'm going to kind of like weigh the odds. And I decided to not go for that big job and just go full on into business. And by the end of my first year, I had 4 employees, an office, and a solid book of business that will last for several years, and haven't looked back ever since.
Can we take a quick step back? Because the point of this is what's the passion is your profit. You explained what your profit is now. Can you explain your passion to us?
Correct. So I've been, since 1992, when the city of LA erupted into flames following the not guilty verdict of the cops who beat Rodney King. I have been heavily involved in community building, community service, community activism, kind of change, not charity, basically. I grew up not far from where the civil unrest began. When it started, I was in a high school that was further away, but a lot of kids from that community where I grew up went to my high school. And I was a co-founder of a multicultural club where we were trying to bring about racial unity and stuff like that. And the principal of the school had brought me and a number of other kids together to help to keep the peace the day after the civil unrest began. I had a number of ideas, so they ultimately asked me to be in charge of the whole effort. And at the end of that day, I was like, I like this. This is something I get value from and meaning from. And that really kind of changed the trajectory of my life and became my passion. I got a scholarship to college where Derek and I both went to that was based off of my community activism as a high school student. And I got a grant to design a social action project while I was in college. And I was heavily active and stuff in college. So then professionally, I've always either worked for elected officials, for nonprofit organizations, or for foundations. My consulting practice, I was able to do the things I was doing in all of those arenas, but combine them together for projects that I really was passionate about.
Yeah, great. I didn't know that piece about you being from LA. I knew you were from LA, the LA area, about the whole Rodney King thing. I mean, I 92 was high school.
I know, right? Right. I gave away my age. I should have said 1992. I was in preschool, but I was just a very preschooler.
I was a fledgling young lady, and I remember hearing the story like everybody else. And you watched it. We were all riveted to the TV, seeing what was going on, but you actually got to live it.
Yeah, like my grandparents lived blocks away. My grandmother, if I recall correctly, had her wedding dress was in a dry cleaner at the time that was looted. My aunt lived like 2 blocks from the corner of Florence and Normandy, where the truck driver was pulled out of the truck and beaten. So it was like and a number of people in my family were impacted by police abuse, so it was very personal and very impactful, but also just being able to see how one person can put some things in action to be able to bring a community together for common purpose and be able to change the outcome was very powerful for me. And I've been able to do that in many parts of my life, from when I worked in a school district. For a school council member, a city council member in New York City, we were able to reform the school nutrition for the 1.1 million kids in the New York City school system. When I led a coalition of high school kids, Black, Latino, and Asian in the South Los Angeles area to be able to bring in a first nation policy to change school discipline, which is now a national model, and the things like that. But being able to kind of take those things that I did for elected officials or other organizations and to build a business around it, for me was mind-blowing. I know it was an option. And going back to your question about how do I know it was a passion or a business, I didn't know it was a business until that point where I said, I have this job opportunity, or I have these contracts where I can do all this work. And I had to decide, okay, if I take these contracts, what does that mean? What would I need to make that work? I need to have an LLC. I need to have an accountant. I need to get an office. I need to get laptops. I need to get all these kind of things. And then I just really sought out advice from my network to be able to really figure out what to do. And I learned a lot in the way, because my mom, as you were saying, Wendy, before, Wendy, you were saying before before I came on, my mom was very entrepreneurial, so there was something in that in my blood. I was the environment I was raised in, so I kind of figured I was able to figure out what I didn't know, and I'm still learning every day.
That's pretty inspiring. And I like how you're saying you learn a lot along the way and you've been figuring things out along the way. So that sort of falls along the lines of the things they don't teach us. You're learning along the way. You're literally doing the title of the show. So what are some of the things that you wished you had been taught, or that you were like, oh, I could teach some of these things?
I think probably two things that I wish I would have focused on more was the financial management. I did have some mentors. One is my financial advisor, who's also a Swarthmore alum, who said at the beginning, make sure you set aside 30% of your income for taxes. And I was like, okay, yeah, I'll do that. And then, but when you're an entrepreneur and you have money coming in and you have money to go out, it's not a high priority. But when I got my first tax return, I thought, oh, I'm a businessman. I mean, like when you're in business, you don't really pay taxes. And my tax guy said, you got taxes to pay and you got to pay it tomorrow. I was like, how much is that check? They want all that tomorrow? I was like, well, we got to do payments for that. That was one just really, but another mentor of mine who was like this big bank guy, he was always saying, make sure you know your EBITDA. Earnings before interest, taxes, and I forget the rest of it. But basically, really to know your financials and know your numbers. Kind of going back to Shark Tank, that's something they always say too, really know your numbers. So you can really be able to know how much money you have, how much you have going out, where is it going, what are your profit margins, how are you setting your prices, all those things. Because when you have payroll, for example, that money is pulled out of your direct deposit every 2 weeks. And you have to make sure that you have the money in your account when you need it. And so to do that, you got to make sure, but you also got to pay rent and lights and internet and what other expenses. And so if you don't know your numbers, then at some point in time, you're going to fall short in that process. And probably the third thing, I know I said two, but the third thing is, especially in this day and age, is the employee experience. Like when you're a small business, most small business owners hire people that they know and who look like them. That's a stat I saw a while ago. And they may not always operate like a big corporation, but an owner will want their employees to kind of go along for the ride with them, to allow them certain liberties and to not have the same expectations as a big company. However, you can't do that. You have to be crystal clear and have your stuff together from the beginning if you want to really be able to get the best out of your team and to make sure that you're not creating any liabilities for yourself, and that you're able to create an environment where your employees also become your advertisement, and like they're not just doing a job, but they become passionate about working for you, and that helps your business to grow. So those are three things I wish I would have prioritized more and knew more about as I was starting.
You touched on something, and it's probably another episode altogether. It's about building your network.
Yeah,
that's something I didn't really understand going to college. I mean, I was like, I'm going to college. I'm here for the piece of paper. I'm not here to make friends.
Yeah.
Worst thing I could have done. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm successful and it's all set, it's all good, but I try to teach people now, like, you build that network. So that's another episode. But yeah.
Oh my gosh, my network is so, I mean, like Derek was helpful and thinking some things through, and a lot of friends who I just happen to always talk to. I try to make sure that once a day, for a breakfast, a coffee, a lunch, a dinner, a drink, or something, I have a real time interaction with someone, and that interaction is like it's just getting together with a friend. But most of my friends are also entrepreneurs, or they're running divisions of companies, or they have perspectives of different things, and so it's just a one thing to be able to connect with friends, but also you learn, you get insight and it's valuable. I remember there was one time when I had an employee tell me no about something, and I had to make sure that I wasn't crazy for wanting to fire him. And so I went to lunch with a friend and talked about it on the way to lunch and back from lunch to talk to two different friends to get their opinions on it. And then walking, and then after I got back to the office, I got a call from another friend who had texted about it. And they kind of assured me, no, I wasn't that crazy. He needed to get fired. And like, and so it's like your friends are also like your sounding board too. I mean, your network is also your sounding board for things like that.
Yeah. So I mean, not really a twist, but what I would sort of layer on top of that is it's not just about your network and keeping people connected, but building your board, your personal board, or building like your team, whether it's your actual professional team of like your lawyers and your accountants, or it's your advising team that helps you sort of figure things out and gives you the perspective that you might need as you're going about building your business or creating a larger series of businesses.
Amen. I always say there's a shirt where it says like Beyonce, you have the same 24 hours a day as Beyonce. I said, yes, but she got a team that I don't have. And you can have amazing ideas, but if you don't have a team to help you to execute at a certain level, it won't happen. And you're totally right, Derek.
That's
well,
wonderful.
I learned from my team, and you guys I consider you two part of my team as well.
All right.
He's tried to fire me a few times.
Well, and that's something else I probably would say to your last question, Wendy, about firing people. It's hard to fire people when you're at a small business because you're a small team, and that's something I had to really learn. No one taught me how to fire anybody. People taught me how to hire and how to select, but never how to fire. And I remember I had this one team member. We had a staff retreat, and this person fell asleep during the retreat. And I looked over and said, is this fool sleeping? And I couldn't help but laugh out loud. And I laughed out loud. And I knew he needed to go, but I didn't have it. I was so invested in him and wanted to try to make it work. But it wasn't until another employee kind of mentioned, well, you let that person do this.
Yeah.
Has to go. So I think a lot of small business people, they get so invested in the person and they don't think about, no, you have a company to be responsible to more so than the person sometimes.
Yeah. But one of the things you mentioned, not to keep back on topic, is it doesn't seem like your path, you had your passion, but the path to your business wasn't exactly direct. You kind of had to do a little serpentine thing where you're going from, as the opportunities came, you kind of flowed with it. I tell people about my business. They ask me about getting started. I tell them, I feel like I was a leaf on the river. Wherever the river went, I went with it. I wasn't very strict in my mind. I'm going to accomplish this. I have a girlfriend who is a lawyer, and she was determined she was going to be this kind of lawyer. And from day one, from high school on to going through law school, the universe didn't hand that to her. And she just was not a happy person. Whereas someone like me goes like, okay, you want me to buy a house? Sure, I'll do it. You want me to paint something? Sure. You want me to do something? Sure, I'll do it. And it kind of created opportunities because I was willing to be flexible and open-minded to things.
No, I guess that's so it's so true. It's so true. When you think about Apple, if Apple was so rigid, say we only make computers, it would not be the company it is today. It probably wouldn't even be in business today. So I think you're, and I think you, Donnie Deutsch, something Deutsch. He's like a really good marketer. He always said you have to be passionate about your customers, and you have to really be invested in learning who they are and what drives them. And ultimately, that should be what drives your business. If you start something or you're passionate about something, you have to sell to somebody. And if you know, like they say in fashion, if you know who your girl is, like on Project Runway, you know who your girl is, you know who you're designing for, then it will all kind of come out. And if your passion is making clothes that sell, you have to be passionate about who's going to buy them. And if you're passionate about, whatever it is, you have to be passionate about the people who are buying it. And then their interests change over time. And if you are so rigid, you won't be in business.
True.
So I want to pick up that line a little bit, because when I read your bio, talking about the CTZN Jones companies or the collection, there were 4 different companies. So do you have 4 different passions? And if so, how do you keep track of them, keep track of all the people that you service?
So I look at it as I ultimately am building a community around a common purpose. So like about doing good, having fun, helping people do the same. And where does it go? In the same way that for Oprah, her kind of mission statement is helping women primarily to live their best lives. And she started with the Oprah Network and the Oprah show. And then at like the Angel Network and the TV show and the magazine, the TV network and the magazine and everything else, it kind of goes to where the audience, that community wants. And so for me, I started with consulting. My other passion has been travel. And I kind of bring my social justice mindset to travel, to where I'm trying to be able to help. I prioritize women and people of color owned businesses. I try to create or identify opportunities for people who are gay and queer and trans to be able to travel safely. And there are many countries where it's still illegal to be gay, and you can't always travel as freely and openly. But I find like the hotels and the tours and everything that not only people can be safe, but learn about the local LGBT experience. And then starting that business, that's the photo booth business started out of that, because I would go to a few trade shows where I would rent a photo booth as part of the trade show booth. I didn't want to just like give out pamphlets. I wanted to make it more of an experience. So I would have a photo booth with like a travel oriented background. They'll take a picture and I would interact with them, and then I would get their email and follow with them afterwards. And I was like, well, if I just bought the whole setup, I could save a lot of money. And then I was like, well, when I'm not doing a trade show, I can hire formerly homeless gay youth and hire them to operate the photo booth at events. And in the LA area, before COVID, there were so many events for gay organizations. And I felt they would really appreciate being able to invest in in a company that was providing opportunities for formerly homeless gay youth. And then from there, a podcast started, like during the pandemic, where I started a podcast that was about the global LGBT experience during the pandemic. And even though it was ostensibly about the pandemic, it was also talking about gay life in Colombia, in the West Bank, and India, and New Zealand, all over the world, and kind of inspiring people to travel. And so all of the businesses, they kind of go back to Wendy's point, like that leaf in the river. I was kind of going along to the point where the clients, when the conditions of the time really directed. And in terms of, so I'm passionate about creating that community that is inspired to do good, have fun, and help people do the same. But in terms of like how to keep it all together, it's not easy, but I'm a good manager of teams. And so what I try to do is bring together teams of people, give really clear vision, try to set clear goals and parameters for each of the projects, and let smart people do what they do best and be passionate about themselves, because like, they may have a better idea than I have to achieve the same goal.
Wow.
Would it be fair to say that your businesses are an extension and a reflection of you?
Oh, definitely. They definitely are. And maybe that's a part of that goes back to your first question about when you know something is your passion, when it's a reflection of you and who you are. I really want to give a shout out to a friend of mine who I'm so proud of. Her name is April Showers. You guys should interview her. During the pandemic, she started a t-shirt line, and because somebody said you're like a black unicorn. And so she looked it up. She couldn't find any black unicorns. So she started a t-shirt line called Afro Unicorn, where it's basically featured 3 black unicorns. 3 years later, she was on yesterday was on CBS morning show for the second time, launching her book line. She has about 40 different product lines in Walmart, Target, Kohl's, all these sorts of like a hair care line,
Oh,
a
wow.
party supplies, toys, all these things. And the brand is about Black women and girls discovering and appreciating their beauty and their uniqueness and all that kind of stuff. And she's authentically herself, and her social media and her TV appearances and her media appearances, and her brand connects with that. And I think the reason why her brand is so successful is because it is her. Like her DNA is all up in that, and people can feel it. It's the reason why Oprah is so successful. She's authentically herself and who she is.
Yeah.
I think most brands, if you're passionate about it, people will feel it and they will want to connect to it and they will want to buy it.
Right. That's great advice. That's great advice and
Yeah.
very powerful. Well, if you want to connect us to her, we'll definitely reach out and see if she wants to have a conversation with us. But also, we know you have to go pretty soon. But before you do, why don't you say how people can reach you? What website should they go to?
Yeah, so I'm actually I had another part of business is you have to deal with problems. I had a malware attack on my websites. They're all hosted in the same place and in the same folder, and it was infected all of them, and even the backups, because by the time we realized it, the backups were also infected. So my websites are down, but you can go to CTZN Jones Travel on Instagram and find me there. You can go to CTZN JNS with CTZN Jones, no vowels. There was like kind of like products and whatnot. It was mostly during the pandemic, but some new stuff was coming out there. But the main place is CTZN Jones Travel on Instagram, where we have a number of curated tours throughout the world, like 10-day cocktail parties, where you'll be able to meet new people and discover a new place. And if like you or your family or group of friends want to go on a girls trip or a guys trip or a birthday vacation or whatever else, or a milestone celebration, we can help you to curate those things. And for consulting, that's a little more niche. But for that one, it's like our clients are mostly people they're individuals who want to connect their values to their brand, their institutions, who are looking to advance progressive social change, or their foundations who are looking to fund a number of organizations to advance a certain cause, and they need and they need us to be able to help to make it all happen more easily for them. So yes, or you can email me at vincent@thecitizenjonescompanies.com.
So a good thing we're recording this because you gave us a lot of information in a very short time. I hope whoever is watching this knows to like hit the reverse button a couple of times to get all that information. But you're on Instagram, you have your website, you gave the email address. I'm sure you have a phone number somewhere that you're not giving out, but that's okay. They'll find you some other ways.
I can give it out.
Stalkers.
No phone numbers, no stalkers, no phone numbers. Yes.
Yeah, but you're on all the socials. You have an email address. You have a website that's coming back, so people can reach you. They can get to you on all the different ways they need to reach you.
Exactly.
So we appreciate your time. Thank you so much for taking the time to meet with us. And glad to have you here. Hope we can have you back again sometime soon. And for those of you who are watching, if you have questions or comments, please leave your questions or comments in the section below on whatever platform you're watching. As you can tell, Vincent is a very busy man, so we don't know if he'll have time to answer the questions, but we'll still forward them anyways and see if he has a chance to respond. But until then, thank you for joining us on another edition of the Things They Don't Teach Us podcast, and we will see you on the next episode. Take care.
Bye-bye.